Hello and welcome to an update. It's the 14th of September and it's been quite a while. So I just wanted to kick off really, I think, and say that we're going to talk about a bit of Intel. I know that so many people really, look forward to that, and it's a part of what you might expect from me. Although it's been a bit thin of late because of the NDA that I had to sign. But things are sort of just on the tipping point now, so maybe we can be a bit more open. First of all, just to kick off and say that appreciate that during this really important time when the Earth is changing for good and the bad side are really feeling the pressure, we expect them to kick out. And somebody once mentioned it was like a cornered animal, and it would just lunge out, and that's very much what's happening. So the usual stories going around that I and Charlie Ward are members of MI6 or MI5 or CIA. Um, I've never been a member of MI5 or MI6 or the CIA. Um, I'm just too much of a free thinker, really. They wouldn't have me. My grandfather, those of you who've bothered to listen to the years and years I've been going, my grandfather was MI6. He really worked for the CIA, and my mother was MI5, and she really worked for the National Security Agency. And neither of them were free thinkers. They were very much part of the system. They're very unhappy, but they were trapped and part of the system. And I've never been part of the system, so it's a bit ridiculous. And those again who bothered to stay with me and know, some years ago, the true Illuminati tried to recruit me, and they sent me an application form. And there's videos. I've done lots of conferences, and I kept the application form unfilled in, of course, and handed it around at conferences to show people because it was very instructive. Although it did say, if you don't want to join us, you must destroy this or return it. Well, I did neither. I thought it was good evidence. And so, I'm often approached by these organizations who, for whatever reason, would like to have me on their books. And, I've never accepted that. The other good way, actually, to tell whether someone is working for the CIA or any of those other groups is that they don't have any problems. They don't have any money problems. They don't have any political problems. They don't have any issues at all because the deep state, the cabal, protects their own. They look after them. And so the more you get attacked and the more that the system turns against you, then the more obvious it is that you're not part of their little cozy club, that you are, a free thinking individual trying to bring the truth out to people. So, yeah, I would say to people, you should ask why now, at this 11th hour, with so much just about to occur in the next few days, why all these attacks against any spiritual organization or any good organization or individual? Why are they being stepped up? And perhaps the answer is because humanity is really progressing, and the last thing the cabal want are people to actually go out and do more, get people to question more, think, do their research, and come to their own conclusions. What the cabal want are little robots. And so, if someone has come to you and said, Charlie Ward is MI6 or Simon Park's MI5, well, I've been going for 10 years. 10 years. Look back at that and compare that. Many of you have met me face to face, either at a conference or you've had a chat with me. And what we find is that most of the troublemakers are paid agents. They are literally paid by the deep state to cause a problem. Some people have a bone to pick. Maybe they were a member and of CC and a coordinator got rid of them for whatever reason, and so they blame me. Who knows? But that's the way it is. So that's the one side of it. These usual attacks have stepped up because, and I'm going to give you some intel of what's occurring. On the other side, with the new website, I sent out emails to people which I had no knowledge of. And somebody said to me, one of my team the other day, yesterday, are you aware of the emails going out? I said, no, because I'm not getting them. So they said, you better have a look. So, things have happened with that website that I have not approved, and not approve emails going out that I have not seen. How can I? I didn't even know they were going out. So yeah, there are some issues there with that, and I know that the heart has suddenly disappeared off the infinity sign for joining. Well, that's not acceptable. I run and I created a spiritual organization. Very keen to join in with the patriot groups in America. Very keen to join in with people like Sheriff Mack. I know Sheriff Mack doesn't share the same positive views about President Trump that I have, but he's a good man and he's doing useful work for good people. And so we have to learn to, understand that there'll be different views that we have about Trump. And there are a number of other people, and it's been great to meet those people. But this is a spiritual organization, not a capitalist money-making bank for any individual or group. And so, I am happy to be part of that network, but I'm not happy that things have been happening the way they have, and I've made that clear, and we will see some changes. So that's that. So if you've had one of these emails, and for instance, you've been unsubscribed from CC, and then you received an email asking you to join, well, don't be cross with me. Be cross with the person the email come from. It says from Simon Parks. It didn't come from me. I never sent it. I haven't even seen sight of it. All right, so let's do some intel because this is really, really exciting. When the Taliban, we'll go all over the place. I know you can follow me. When the Taliban captured the governor's residence and the assistant governor, they actually found kilo gold blocks, gold ingots, stored up and hidden. And I don't know how many, but there were many. And they also found large quantities of cash. And what happened was that the Taliban got in so quickly that the two people couldn't get out fast enough. We know that the senior guy got out in a helicopter and all the rest of it, and I'm told that he got away with quite a lot of gold and cash. And Trump's been quite clear and has called this guy who was leading Afghanistan a corrupt politician. So it appears that these two guys had stashes of gold sitting in their house, which is okay. I know people might put their money in gold and they put their money in silver. That's absolutely fine, but not if it's at the expense of the people. If you've got to have very separate rules between what you do as a politician, the taxpayers' money, the people's money, and what you do as an individual, your own personal, private money. And so it's incredibly suspicious that these people would flee the country and leave vast quantities of gold and cash behind. And the Taliban have shown that. And I'm no doubt that that's true. Now, I don't know much about the Taliban, but I do know that they torched the opium fields to prevent the CIA obtaining vast amounts of drugs to make money. I do know that the Taliban have executed a number of people left in Kabul and around who were agents for the deep state, and the American military refused them entry onto United States planes. These bad actors, were trying, as American citizens, were trying to get on an airplane out to get to the US, and the troops, when they were checking all these names, they were just saying, no, we're not taking you. And they, I understand, have been executed by the Taliban. And these people were deep state actors. Now, I'm sure that innocent people have died, and I'm not for 1 minute going to pretend otherwise. But what I'm saying to you is it's a vastly more complex situation that is unraveling in Afghanistan. And it's frankly quite ludicrous for people to blame President Trump for what's occurring. Had President Trump been in office, there would certainly have been a troop withdrawal, probably over 3 months. Probably Trump sitting around the table with these guys doing a deal. And I'm absolutely sure that had Trump been in office, the deal that he would have arranged would be that women would still be allowed to be lecturers and doctors and teachers. Women could still do this and do that. But because of the chaotic way that the Biden administration or those around the Biden character attempted to try to create a negotiation, the heart fell out of the Afghani army because they suddenly realized that the Biden White House was absolutely useless and had no ability to project its might or its power. When Trump was in office, he was able to project the power of the United States. And so when the Taliban realized that the Biden character had absolutely no effect whatsoever, they just charged in, and the Afghani army realized they were not going to get any political assistance from the United States. And so they just thought, well, to hell with it. And they just threw their guns down and they went and did the day job. And so, of course, the Taliban have got quite a huge amount of equipment, which actually will change the balance of power in that region. The amount of small arms, the amount of equipment there is phenomenal. And it's actually more serious than when the Shah of Iran, I think it was 1979, when the Shah of Iran was overthrown, and the fundamental group took over. America had just done a deal with the Shah, and a number of F-14 Tomcats, jet fighters, I think originated on an aircraft carrier, and then they made them land-based, but very advanced at the time with the Phoenix missiles had been delivered. But these aircraft were so technologically advanced that in a very short period of time they broke down. With no spares coming from America, they became an ineffective force. So this is more serious because the equipment that the country has, very low tech, relatively speaking, probably will last 10 years. And so it's a serious alteration to the balance of power simply because the Biden team did not negotiate a proper deal. Also because the Afghani government appears to be horrendously corrupt. We're just stealing off the people. This is what we see time and time again, so nothing new there. So just to be clear, that's a much more complicated news story than CNN or the BBC are portraying. All right. So what else is happening? In Britain, the passport the COVID passports have been scrapped. So there's this great plan to, if you have your 2 injections, you get this so-called passport, which allowed you to go to nightclubs or go on an airplane or do this and do that. Well, just out of the blue, they've scrapped that. And I think it's Costa Coffee that you can't go in to a Costa Coffee unless you've had 2 jabs. So obviously, I can't go into Costa Coffee. Nobody that I know is going into Costa Coffee. So how are they standing now with the government turning around and saying, no, we're not going to implement this COVID passport? Why would a private company now still be wanting to push that? Why would any organization wish to push a cabal viewpoint? Maybe they're just, under some illusion that, this is better for people. I'm certainly not under that illusion, and I believe it's not better for people. I think that you should have a free country, and people choose, within reason, as long as no one's being murdered, a free reason to be able to do that. And if a private company wants to do it, but the government is not doing it, that's very strange. So we'd like to know who's on the board of Costa Coffee. Are they part of the same old big actors? So that's something that may seem insignificant, but actually is tremendously important, because with the government in Great Britain saying we're not going down that road, there's no pressure on any organization to implement that. And I still think that it's totally disgusting that employers are forcing employees to have injections. And we've got CC staff, and some of them I personally know, who've been in the medical profession. And I have a doctor who's done a YouTube video, who's a CC member. We've got many members who've lost their job. They've actually been sacked. They've had warnings because they refused to take the injection, and they've refused point blank. And in the end, they've been sacked. So, where are we in a world where an employer will sack you because you are refusing to be forcibly injected? What was the Nuremberg trials about? What's the Hague Court about? Where, you know, the laws are passed that says that people will not be experimented on. Now, these injections, this content of these injections is an experimental drug. Even the companies themselves have said that this is not tried and tested, it's experimental. But how many people, when they were being injected by medical staff, were told it's an experimental drug? How can an employer say to an employee, we are going to require you to be forcibly injected with an experimental drug, and if you don't, you are going to lose your employment with us? Surely that's something that needs to be settled at a later date in the court. Just as in 1945 and 1946, a number of doctors in Nuremberg were, you know, sentenced to very severe reprisals because they had done things that they knew were wrong. And that might not be a million miles from what we might be looking at, you know, in this country and perhaps in other countries as well. We talk about the quantum financial system, and many people still don't, understandably, grasp the importance of it. You know, they want the EBS, or they want, you know, the mainstream media to come down. They don't really, it's not an important aspect to it. You know, yes, but I don't want to hear about the QFS. Tell me about the EBS. Tell me about this. On this earth, everything is about money. It's terrible, but that's a reality. Something that, you know, I have, and many others have wanted to change. But that's the reality today on the earth, that without money, it's very difficult to do anything beyond a certain level. And so if we accept, and I certainly do, that the bad people have been able to obtain money from a whole range of methods, shall we say, and through that they've funded a plethora of their own projects, some that we know about, some that we don't know about. Well, if you stop that, or you reduce it, you squeeze that, then those bad guys, those bad actors, don't have access to that money. Therefore, they can't do so much chemtrailing. They can't do so much, you know, instigate a war in a particular country, or do this or do that. And so the white knights, or the white hats, whatever you want to call them, understood a long time ago that in order to bring some sort of balance, the first thing you had to do was to reduce the cash, the money that these bad guys had. Because if you took away that, then their ability to buy or influence was hugely reduced. And I said on one of my videos some weeks ago that I'd been in a bank locally here, and I'd overheard staff saying they were running out of money, but they should be getting more money in on a Friday. Now, you know, I don't know about you, but when's the last time you heard staff in a bank saying that we're out of cash? And that's a reason for it, because the Bank of England has not been allowed to print any fresh money, paper money, physical money, for a year. And the Federal Reserve in America also has not printed any physical paper money. So the amount of physical paper money is reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced. And that's why there's a rolling program of not filling the ATMs, the automatic cash machines in the bank's walls. There's a program, we'll fill this on Tuesday, but for the next week it's going to have nothing in it, and we'll move on. Because there is now not enough physical cash to fill every cash machine and to actually maintain money in the bank. And this is one of the reasons that the deep state have closed over the last 2 years so many cash machines. They said it's because it doesn't make money. It's because they did not have, and they projected they would not have enough physical cash to keep it going. Now, this is very important because it brings these guys to the table, the discussion table, to say we can no longer run our business. This is international banking. We can't run it. So, okay, we'll come to the table and we'll talk to you. The new money, the quantum money, is separate from their system. And so the deal is that that quantum money will go into their banks. So they'll be able to keep, it's not just the employment, it's about the empire. They're more interested in the empire than employing staff. But the quantum system will put money in. But the deal is that the banks will not be able to use that quantum money in the same way that they used the ordinary currency. So yes, the quantum money can be used to pay staff's wages. Yes, it can be used for legitimate banking businesses, but they're not allowed to use it for all of these dreadful speculations and some of the very bad things that I know that some of these banks have been doing. So that's what's occurring at this very moment. This week is pivotal, absolutely pivotal. It's very important for CC because we will move to the next stage, fingers crossed. It's very important for humanity, and it's very important for what's to come. Because as I was saying to Becky and to some of the senior members of CC, you can't do what we want to do if you haven't got the foundations right. So if you haven't got the money in the right places and you haven't got the bad guys bottled up enough, then, if you start bringing in other physical forms of operations, then you're building a house onto rotten foundations. And so part of this huge delay, and it has been a massive delay since January, the boxes behind me, we were ready to move as a team and get things done. We've been ready since January, but we've been waiting for the green light. We are ready to move at a moment's notice, and there'll be other members of the team who are actually going to physically move as well. And it's not in our remit. We, like everyone else, will be told, green light, go. We knew it was coming, we just didn't quite know when, but now we're right on the edge of it. And so when that is secured and that's done, we can expect things like certain buildings to be removed. We can expect individuals to be removed. We can expect something in the public eye, something that says to the people of the world, this is the truth. Because unless we show you the truth, we know you won't believe us. So the truth isn't going to be something on my website, although I'll cover it. Of course I will, like the Man of God documents, and I will talk about that in a minute. There are 10 documents in total, by the way, coming from the same people who were around President Trump. Unless we can bring change in an obvious way to humanity, so the BBC, the CNN, it's got to be absolutely obvious. So yeah, let's see the BBC be switched off. Let's see CNN be turned off. Let's have cell phones, mobile phones go dead for a few days while we get broadcast coming over it. Let's put the television on and find that there's only one channel operating, and it's a channel bringing us the truth. Let the people of the world, not too quickly, but quick enough, be shown exactly what has been done in their name. And there's the split between the patriot movement in the United States and perhaps the way that CC operates and how we see things. I do believe President Trump's coming back, but I also understand the patriot point of view that if in America they stand up and say, "Hey, Trump's coming back in January 22, or this is happening, or that's happening," then so many people would just fall back in their armchairs and say, "Oh, well, I don't have to do anything. Oh, the military have got it all sorted out. I don't need to worry. Trump's coming back. All's good. I can just get back to my old life." And if that happens, the evil will rise up again, and in a number of years, we'll be back in this same position. So I fully understand people like General Flynn. I fully understand people like Sheriff Mack, who don't want to talk about the possibility of any of that. And they just talk about the need for the American people and the people of the world to take responsibility. And of course, I see both points of view. I think it's vital that never again does the ordinary man or woman trust politicians to the extent that they create this evil. But at the same time, I do think that there's only so much an individual can do. And there are a lot of good people in the military around the world. And I promise you, I can tell you that those that I have spoken to are sick to death of the evil that you and I talk about and that we're aware of. And the good people are fed up with it. And so those of you who are awake and aware, thank goodness there's a lot of you, have seen and have got, we call it eyes to see, ears to hear, under the scenes, if you like, a lot of changes going on. A lot of people have been arrested. A lot of things have been done. But ultimately, unless that comes out into the public eye, then what's the use of it? It's like preaching to the converted. I can give you new intel, but the whole story, how are we advancing it? Unless we can reach those people who sit in the middle ground, who they're not totally programmed, but they're able to think for themselves. So these documents, and we'll go on to that, the Man of God document, what a lot of criticism that got. Oh, the spelling was bad. Oh, the grammar was bad. Instead of focusing on the message, so many people just wanted to attack it and say that's not a legal document. Well, that's actually not to understand what it's about. When you give, and I know this, when you give a document to a lawyer, you don't say to the lawyer, spell check it for me, check the grammar. What you say to the lawyer is, can I say that? If I say that, what's the legal implications? And the lawyer writes back and says, well, you can't say that, but you can say this, or I don't recommend you say that. It's not their job to change the grammar or the spelling. The other thing is that the people who have written this are mainly military. Their degrees are in soldiering. They're not in the etiquette of language, right? So these documents are from very, very spiritual people who are part of the team, the wider team supporting Trump, the wider team supporting humanity. And no disrespect at all to the military. Someone who's a damn good soldier is probably not going to be able to communicate with a civilian in a particularly good way. Why would he or she? That's not their role, is it? But somebody who's on the edges of that, works with them, but perhaps isn't necessarily a serving soldier, but is much more in tune. And when I saw that document which Charlie Ward received, the first thing I said to Charlie is that's 1776. And then I did a chat with Charlie, and sure enough, it's modeled very much on it. And so it's the first one explaining why, in America, but also in the world, why we're in this position. And so the documents that we're going to publish and release take the reader on a journey. And again, you might say, look, I know all this, or I know most of it. But the mainstream wouldn't publish this. This was put to the mainstream and they refused to publish it. So we've been asked to do it. And what we're hoping is that there'll be a lot of people who know some of the stuff, but not all of it. One of the documents we're going to post, I found fascinating. It was about the running of the Senate and the Congress and how American legislation worked. And as somebody who himself, that's me, has served as a politician in this country, until I decided to get out because I could see where it was going. And you look at this and you think, my God, that's really good, because the document we're going to post shows how America works and how it's been altered so the bad guys get what they want. And there's another document that's coming out which shows people how to effectively challenge within the legal system in America any laws they don't like. And so what it is, it's trying to empower people, because this has got to be a two-pronged approach. The white hats, the military, are going to do their own thing on the name of the people, but the people must also do their own thing. Nobody's asking people to take up arms. That's not what's being asked. What's being asked is that people educate themselves and actually be prepared to stand up and not turn the other cheek. So, for instance, when someone in semi-officialdom requires something of you, don't just bow your head and look at the ground and say, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Say, why? Why do I have to do that? Who are you to tell me to do that? So it's about stepping into your own power, words we use all the time, but actually, do we actually do it? So the time is coming, I think, where we can actually say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. I have rights. And so What I would expect to see in the coming days are some very obvious signs, and I say obvious, I mean, very obvious, that the status quo is changing dramatically. I do want to see an EBS. I do want to see certain buildings brought down because of the evil that's associated with those buildings or the tunnels underneath them. We've talked about CERN in 2015. The CC organization did a remarkably good job for humanity. And we know that's true because it's there in the public domain, what happened. And we also know because the CERN is going to be one of the targets. So under Lake Geneva, there's a very interesting, not very good facility. CERN itself, I believe, is not a very good facility. And so we're going to see things that, CC was telling the people about in 2015. You're about to see that play out in a much more effective way than we could ever do. But nevertheless, we did our bit. We're going to see other buildings that are earmarked for very interesting attention. You're going to see individuals' names suddenly come out. I hope that there is a sort of a turning off of the internet for a short period of time, because all of these things, the ordinary public then cannot turn around and say, well, what's that about? Do you want to introduce yourself? This is Merlin. He's grown up a little bit since you last saw him. There he is. As one person said to me, strangest dog I've ever seen. So there he is. His name is Merlin, and he's quite a lovely dog, and he likes to sit while I do these talks to you. So we have some really, really exciting and difficult and challenging times to come. And, I've consistently said you need a couple of weeks worth of food, you need a bit of water, torches, the Americans would call a flashlight. You need some method perhaps to cook, if a gas cooker, if there's going to be a bit of a problem. I genuinely don't know. Each country will have a different level of upset. We know there are food shortages coming. We've had enough warnings about HGV lorries, trucks. We know that China has closed a number of its ports. We know that some of the big car plants in America have actually closed. We know that food processing plants are being closed, and it's becoming very obvious that inflation and prices are going to rise. So there are difficult times coming, and there's no coincidence with what's going on in what we would call the petrol stations, what American would call the gas, with this new E10 fuel. You're putting fuel in your car, and then someone says to you, well, you can't use that. Your car was pre-2014. Well, when did I get told about that? The first thing anybody knew was in the pumps. There's a problem going on. They are dropping the quality of the fuel that you put in your car. There's so much happening, and what we need is it out in the public. We need the public made aware of it. That's what's coming. And so it's all about being sensible, keeping safe. You don't have to have lots of money and build a fort, a castle around yourself. For most people, just be aware, keep a few tins of food, and if you've got pets like I have, then make sure you've got the right food for them in case it's very difficult to obtain pet food. So it is happening, and it is positive, although it's difficult in the race towards it. So we have got changes coming, and these are the changes that people will say, oh, finally, waited long enough. And I can sympathize with that. It's been a very long and difficult journey for any good person. Good people get it bad. Evil people get it easy. That's what's got to be changed and will change, because goodness needs to be rewarded and evil needs to be stopped and not rewarded. So many people in Hollywood know the truth, but are too frightened. That's why I'm talking about being brave, standing up to it. And I'm sure that people say to me, very easy for you to say that, Simon, but your family's been tortured and blackmailed. And I do understand that. I've worked with those people. I know. But we have to make a stand somewhere. We can't just be kicked around all the time. And the time for humanity just to be a punch ball or a punch bag, as we say in Britain, that's over. We can't afford to do that. We're more than that. Humanity is remarkably special. and we've been taught to believe that we're not that important. We've been trained to believe that we're lucky to have a job. We're lucky to be able to have a holiday once a year. We're lucky to have a roof over our head. We're lucky this, lucky that. And then we're told, but don't expect too much. Don't don't expect too much. It's only the footballers or the film stars who can expect all that because they're better than you. Full football player makes £100,000 a week, $100,000 a week. It's got to be better than you because he's paid more. And those of you who've listened to me, do you remember I used to say, why is a bank manager paid more than a nurse? Now, why is a football player better than a nurse? If you fall over and have a heart attack on the sidewalk, do you want a football player to come over and say, are you all right? Or do you want a nurse to come over and say, are you all right? Who's got the medical training? Who is bound by their oath to actually assist anybody who's injured? Yet the system rewards people who make money. Now, how do footballers make money? Sorry to go on, but it's one of my points. They make money because they appear in front of television at a football game. If we just use the money that the spectators paid, then what would happen actually is that the football club would have to give satisfaction to the spectators. It would have to do what the spectators wanted. It would have to respond to the wishes and needs of the spectators instead of let's sign the best television deal. We don't care about the spectators. There's just a necessary evil. It's the chanting and the shouting, and it builds up the atmosphere. What we really want is the big deals with the television companies. Well, that's not right, is it? And here's why it's not right. England. Let's say that you're an Arsenal supporter, okay? When you pay a subscription to a certain television satellite company that shall remain nameless, you pay a sports channel. It's hugely expensive. I can't afford it, but it's massively expensive, and people, they find the money to do it, and that's fine. That's their entertainment. So you're an Arsenal supporter, and you pay this satellite company so that you can sit and watch these televised football matches that other people can't. And what does that satellite company do with that money? It gives it to other clubs. So an Arsenal supporter is basically funding Manchester United. Manchester City is basically funding Everton. They're all in it together. The money that you give doesn't just sit, oh, it just pays for the service. Those TV companies actually pay those opposing football clubs so that they can film it. And when you see the real dislike between these football teams, I don't think for 1 minute that any of those ordinary people actually realize what their subscription or their money is going to. And so what the system has done is it's successfully tribalized or broken up humanity into interest groups or oppressed groups, or I'm a special group because I'm a university lecturer, or I'm a doctor, or I'm this, or I'm that, and I'm earn more than you, therefore I must be more important than you. And whether that individual thinks that way or not, because I'm not attacking the individual, that is the system that's been created. And until humans can actually understand that they're one group and we need to work together, the baddies have successfully put these seeds of destruction into humans' minds, and it starts very early on indeed. So the people behind the documents that Charlie Ward and I are posting, the people who want to support connecting consciousness, the people that actually are fighting against the stolen election in America and indeed other countries, have a very clear view of what should happen and what shouldn't happen. And they're not going to sit back and just be kicked around. There will be changes coming. And so connecting consciousness is part of that change. Okay, I believe, and the organization and those that we've put in positions around us as coordinators believe that humanity deserves better We all deserve better. And frankly, we're not going to get it in the structure of the system that we exist in. There are some really good, disillusioned, and hoodwinked people who think that if they work really hard in the job they do, somehow they'll be rewarded. Okay, right, if you're in a bank, you'll be rewarded financially. But I should think 90% of people don't work in a bank. They have a whole range of jobs. And what are you doing? You're getting up every day. If you're lucky to have a job, you're getting up, you're slaving away, and I'm using that word deliberately. And I'm not attacking you or your colleagues or the nice people around you, or indeed, the structure. I'm talking about those people that made all this happen. And so what we do is we survive from day to day, and we're not really having time for ourselves. What do we really want? What do I really want? What should the system be doing to make my life more joyous, not oppressing me with bills to pay, taxes to pay, this to do, that to do? No wonder people don't have any time for themselves, because they are just simply running to stand still, as we often say. So I think we've all had enough of that. The difficulty is when the vast majority of people don't see that, and they think that that is the way it's going to be because it's always been like that. The number of people who've said to me, yeah, but what can I do? I'm just one person. Or there always needs to be somebody in the gutter so that I can be more successful than them. And I say to people, just think about what you've said. Just think about that. Because today you're not in the gutter, but tomorrow you might be. You're somebody's friend today, and you're the best boy in the club, and then on Tuesday they don't want you anymore, you're just thrown out. Do we really want a life like that? How can we plan? How can we bring our children up or look after our old people if we haven't a clue what the environment will be in 5 years or 10 years? And so I can tell you that the people who are working very hard to try to bring some balance to this world want consistency. They want a world that we can plan. President Trump was in for 4 years. We didn't have a single war. Oh, sure, he had inherited wars, but he didn't initiate a war. I can't think of many presidents that haven't kicked off a war. And the reason for that was because when the people came to him and said, hey, let's have a war, he said no. That's why they hated him, for many reasons, because he wouldn't project America's power for no good reason. Now, we've had 9/11, it was 20 years, and I'm absolutely delighted that relatively went off quietly. Many of us were told to stay indoors, many of us were put on a curfew, told don't go out, don't do this, don't do that, because we don't know the power of the deep state. While it does appear to me that the good guys did quite a lot on 9/11, quietly, and the evil players weren't much in a position to fight back. Now then, here's a bit of intel for you. Those of you who have listened to me might remember 5 years ago, 5 years, 6 years ago, I talked about a number of, I call them suitcase bombs. They were nuclear bombs. Some of them were what we would call dirty bombs, low yield, but with a lot of very dirty, heavy contaminants in them. These did come from a secret organization in the Middle East, or the Far East, or the Near East. Can't be any more clear than that. And they were distributed out to the cabal. The trouble was that some of these mechanisms for activating them were quite old even at the time. And when we go back to the time of the inauguration of Biden, there was an explosion. I can't remember now, it was Portugal or Spain. There was an explosion which the deep state said was just a gas explosion. And this occurred 1 hour before the supposed inauguration. And I said to people at the time, that is a warning to the White Hats not to intervene on inauguration day. I did expect lower forms around the Biden group to be arrested at that point. That explosion scuppered that 1 hour before it went off. And although that was just a conventional explosion, the threat was, we have these suitcase bombs and we will do this to every major capital in Europe. Now, what the good guys have been doing, particularly over the last 8 weeks, is collecting, can I call it that, collecting these suitcases. And in Australia, there was a very severe lockdown in a particular area. And many people, quite understandably, said that that was the cabal trying to put the pressure on. It wasn't actually, not in that instance. Sit still. In that instance, it was the good guys who were attempting, there were two suitcase bombs in Australia, and they got them, and they defused them. And they really didn't want anybody out of their homes at that time. So that was a particular lockdown, which was not just a 4 hour or 10 hour, it was many days staking out, many days of operation. I understand that every suitcase bomb has been accounted for now. I understand that most of the tunnels that couldn't be taken out by weapons have been flooded and made inoperable. I think there are one or two more facilities to go. Okay, one or two more facilities to go. There may be one or two dramatic acts yet to happen, but I think that I always said to you guys, that I never liked the idea that, oh, the war was won, the war's over, and that's such a glib throwaway comment, and I'm sure people don't mean it because they knew it had been won. But I used to say back to people, well, not in my backyard, it hasn't. We're still fighting tooth and nail here. So it may be over in your neck of the woods, but it's certainly not over in my backyard. But I know what they mean. What they meant was the head had been taken off the snake, and the guys underneath it were, I don't know, running around headless, but still causing a lot of problems. But they were causing problems, and they still are causing problems. So the war's not won. The end game is written out, but it's still to play out. And there's no coincidence that the movement in the United States is very strongly aligned to religious views. And if you remember your Revelation, those of you who perhaps have had a chance to read the Bible, Revelation talks about the 7 trumpets and the 7 seals. And so we are expecting what's called 7 trumpets. And these are 7 presidential addresses at some point over the EBS. And so what the good guys are doing is matching Revelation wherever they can, because this is the Great Awakening. Now, unlike Revelation, it's not the destruction of the earth, but it's the choosing of humanity. What do you choose to be? Do you choose to be a free man or woman, or do you choose to continue to be a slave? And so, I know a lot of people don't like the strong religious aspect that comes from patriots in America, but that's the reason for it. Right, that's it. Lots of love to you, and keep you up to date as soon as I can. Take care.